Third party, third party, third party. Zach, when you hear Nintendo Switch or anything Nintendo, do you really think about third party games?
Before, not really, but maybe that's a different story now.
Yeah, but if you ask anyone too, like most people that probably own a Nintendo Switch 2 or a Nintendo Switch probably have something else to kind of supplement it with to play those third-party games. But even though I own like a Steam Deck, I have a PlayStation 5, I still love playing third-party games on my Nintendo Switch. And that's something that we're going to be talking about here in this discussion video. We're going to be doing a little bit of a grading of how we think the Nintendo Switch 2 is doing with third-party games. So Zach, I'll kick it off to you. Top level thoughts, like how's it doing?
I mean, it's definitely a mixed bag for sure.
Yeah.
But you look at the year already and we're seeing some incredible third-party support, and it's honestly been spearheaded all by Capcom. Yeah. Capcom is, I don't know what they're doing over there. They got some wizards, in the lab just absolutely cooking up not just great games, but great Switch ports. We just reviewed Pragmata, phenomenal game, and a very good Switch 2 port as well. We had Resident Evil 9 earlier this year, same thing, really impressive on the Switch 2 and a phenomenal game in general. So you look at, those two games alone are two great reasons to buy some third-party games for your Switch 2. But overall, I would say I think we're seeing a much bigger adoption of third-party. Obviously, third-party and Nintendo have had a back-and-forth history. Lack of third-party is what killed the Wii U. And embrace the third parties embracing the Switch, and now the Switch 2 has kind of led to it having a life on its own outside of Nintendo, shall we say. But it's not all good news, I will say. There are still some third-party games missing. I think one of the most glaring ones is Elden Ring. We know about that was one of the first third-party games we found out was coming to the Switch 2, and now we hear it's all over the place, and who knows what's going on with it. Not to mention, like I said, very impressive, those Switch 2 ports, but it's hard to put them side by side against some of their contemporaries like PS5 or Steam or Xbox. And not to mention that, but we've heard rumblings in the background of next gen being on the horizon, although who knows exactly when that'll be. So just because the Switch 2 is catching up right now, are they going to be having to play a little bit more catch up in the not so distant future?
Yeah, I would like to see other third parties kind of adopt it as much as Capcom. Again, like I don't know what they're cooking over there, but whenever they have a game, especially this year, they've been doing day and date, which is kind of shocking. It's like, Resident Evil 9, it's out the same day everywhere else. Monster Hunter Stories 3, it's out same day everywhere else. And then Pragmata out same day everywhere else, including Switch 2. And the thing is, like, they're really going full blown with the Switch support that they even have amiibos. Like, I'm trying to think of what other third parties out there that have had amiibos for the Switch 2. But it's been the Street Fighter characters, it's been Resident Evil, Monster Hunter Stories, and Pragmata with Diana. Why can't I think of her name?
Yep, Diana. Yeah,
Diana. I was going to say,
crazy to see
other like Japanese. I say not to the same level as Capcom, but like I think Sega's been doing a decent job with ports and whatnot. Because there's always a new Yakuza game being ported over to the Switch 2. I will say like their Sonic support has been kind of all over the place with Switch 2, even though it is there, especially with like Shadow Generations making you double dip on that game. I was a little upset about that because I did have it for Switch 1, and then you had to pay $50 again to get the Switch 2 version. There was no upgrade path or anything, and that was a day one, I want to say, Switch 2 launch title was Shadow Generations. So seeing that they were making you buy it again and no upgrade path was kind of upsetting. And then on top of that, like with Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, that also came at a later date. Even though that had an upgrade path, which I think they learned from Shadow Generations, it wasn't day and date with all the other consoles. So I think Sega is a little behind on Capcom, but again, it's nice to see that there is support on Switch 2 from third parties outside of Capcom kind of just carrying the weight.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge exactly how the third-party landscape as a whole is doing on the Switch 2 because Capcom has set the bar so high. Yeah. But you just mentioned a couple of those hiccups for Sega. obviously before we mentioned Elden Ring, Bandai Namco, what's going on there. We haven't heard anything on Dustbloods in a while. Maybe we'll hear more about it soon. But beyond that, I think some of their other games that were recently announced, I think they announced a new Dragon Ball game that is seriously not coming to the Switch 2. When I think other games in that series have made their way to Switch 2. So weird decisions there. It's hard to say exactly how third parties as a whole are doing. I know one thing we definitely want to touch on is the Switch 2. When it first came out, we know dev kits of it were very, very, very rare. Nintendo was super selective with who they gave their dev kits to, and as a result, that meant a lot of indies and third parties that didn't have a big, blockbuster game ready to go for Switch launch were kind of left a little bit on the back burner in terms of their ability to mess with the Switch 2 and actually get their games optimized for it. So I could see things like the Sega situation. I could see that being a growing pain that they'll sort out of maybe they just couldn't in time figure out how to get the upgrade path going the way they wanted to. And they were just like, we got to put something out or else it, we risk being too far away from our deadlines. But other than that, I mean, like I said, it really is a mixed bag, and Capcom is really carrying the load. You mentioned the amiibos. It's crazy. I mean, to a point, it almost is like we're seeing an amiibo renaissance. Yeah. And it was shocking when we first got those Street Fighter amiibos when Street Fighter was announced for Switch 2. One, because they were third-party amiibos, and two, just because, people were uncertain about what amiibo's role was going to be come Switch 2. And now it seems like they're back and better than ever, at least from a buying the amiibo standpoint. I don't know if the functionality exactly has lived up to the quality of the actual figures themselves. But yeah, it feels like third parties are really buying into the Switch 2 even from that standpoint.
And you did mention, again, like we're highlighting Capcom here, we're highlighting Sega, but going back to kind of like the Bandai Namco with Elden Ring, again, I think the first time that was playable to the public was Gamescom of last year, and from what I can remember, people said it just did not run well on Switch 2. So again, I assume Bandai Namco went back to the drawing board and were like, hey, we need to delay this game by a significant amount, because it was supposed to come out last year, I believe, like maybe winter of last year, if not early 2026. And the thing is too, I don't know if we're going to get news on Dustblood if this game isn't out yet, right? Like Dustblood, they did show off last year at the Switch 2 presentation, but we haven't heard or seen anything else on that yet. I don't believe so. I think Elden Ring, they want to get out of the way first before they highlight Dustbloods.
Yeah, and you gotta wonder how this Elden Ring delay affects Dustbloods too, because are there resources internally that are going towards getting this Elden Ring port done that would otherwise be going to Dustbloods? And then, not to mention that, but maybe they're having trouble getting things working on Dustbloods as well. Yeah. From what we've heard, it's supposed to be a multiplayer game. Like it's supposed to have a pretty good multiplayer element to it, and I can't imagine that that's easy to get running necessarily unless you make some considerable compromises. So if they're having a hard time getting Elden Ring running, and maybe they're built on kind of the same engine, we could see Dustbloods getting a delay or being affected in some way further down the line.
Yeah, and that game has a 2026 release date, but again, we haven't heard anything else on that. Outside of, I want to say, again, Sega we've been highlighting, Capcom we've been highlighting Bandai Namco, but we're not for the right reasons. I think Square Enix has been doing a decent job supporting the Switch 2 so far. I mean, again, they've been putting out those HD 2D remakes, like with Dragon Quest, and then I want to say, what was it? Why can't I think of it? Not Elliot, that one's not out yet, I don't believe. Octopath.
Yeah, Octopath Zero.
Octopath Zero. And then they have, they just recently had, or I want to say like a few months ago, they had Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate come out, which I had a great time playing that on Switch 2. And then they have Remake Part 2, or I guess, why can't I think of the name of this one? Rebirth come out during the summer. And then that begs the question, is part 3 going to be a day and date with the Switch 2? Because have they confirmed if they're taking away the exclusivity, or is that just something that we all assume?
That's been a big thing for Square Enix. Square Enix has been all over the place. They've been doing a lot of internal restructuring and reevaluation in terms of their goals and their performance. But one thing that they have made clear is that they want to focus on multi-platform, and they have prioritized getting stuff on the Switch 2. And I think, honestly, Square Enix is probably one of the best showcases of a game finding second life on the Switch 2 that it, didn't have before. I think it is kind of funny because Square Enix complains that, one of the, Final Fantasy VII didn't sell as well because we only launched it on PlayStation. But I almost feel like in a way that helped them, because you play it on PlayStation, and then a few years later it becomes available on Switch. And that's a kind of game where, if you get that running on Switch 2, which they got it running at, a good resolution, reliable 30 FPS frame rate, that's something where you're like, okay, this is something I want to take on the go with me. This is a game that I would love to, try out on the go. And I think that's a lot of the appeal of the Switch 2 to a lot of people, is its portability. So it's funny in a way. I feel like they have a chance to double dip when they do the stagger release. But regardless, I think Square Enix is definitely prioritizing the Switch 2. And as far as lining it up for the third entry of the remake trilogy, it's going to be hard to say. A lot of it's going to depend on how well the performance is for Rebirth. Yeah. We know Rebirth is coming, and Rebirth is a substantially bigger game than Remake, much bigger world. So we're definitely going to have to see what compromises are made on the Switch 2 for that. And if there's a lot of compromises made, then maybe it might take a little bit longer to get part 3 in the works than we think. And, according to timeline, I feel like part 3 is right around the corner, might even be revealed this year. So who knows if they'll be able to get that ready in time for the Switch 2.
You figure they have the sales numbers for it, especially after with Remake coming out for Switch 2 and Xbox Series X. They're probably looking at those numbers and they're like, hey, I'm just assuming, but I don't think it sold probably that well on Xbox. Like, it probably sold better on Switch 2. That's just my assumption because, again, double dippers from PlayStation jumping over, wanting to play it in handheld mode. But yeah, they're probably looking at stuff like that and being like, hey, like, we should really get this lined up so it's ready day and date for Switch 2. Because if that's an option and if it plays somewhat well, I might even just pick it up for Switch 2 instead of PlayStation, which kind of sounds crazy because, like, knowing how much of a performance, like, how much is going on in Rebirth, like, I don't even know how that's going to run on Switch 2. Again, there's going to be some compromises made and whatnot. But we've been really just highlighting, like, a lot of the Japanese third parties here. Like, on the end of, I guess, European or American, is there anyone that we should highlight here?
I think a good one to bring up right now is one that's pretty relevant to both of us. We just got an Overwatch 2 port. It launched to a very rough start. A lot of people were speculating that they accidentally uploaded the Switch 1 version again, just as the Switch 2 version. It uploaded with this weird 30 FPS frame cap, and the models weren't quite right. But they got it fixed quickly, so shout out to Blizzard for getting that done. But yeah, now that it's fully fixed, it's awesome. Honestly, yeah. It is so nice to be able to play Overwatch in handheld and not have it just run terribly. Love the Switch 1, but that thing, was struggling to keep up with Overwatch, and on the Switch 2, it handles it pretty well, all things considered, and even adds in stuff. Me personally, I'm not a huge gyro control guy, but I've heard really good things about the gyro support for Overwatch 2. So even adding in little features like that, shout out to Blizzard, shout out to Nintendo for that kind of partnership and, riding the ship on a game that is seeing a massive comeback.
Yeah, we got the 10th anniversary for it coming up, and we've been playing it on Switch 1 and on PlayStation 4 and 5 since beta. I guess beta was PC, but shortly after that I jumped on those, and then a few years after that it was on Switch 1. But Switch 1 was not the place to play it, but when you're playing with friends and you don't want to play on PC, so you're in the PC pools, like, it's worth the sacrifice playing on Switch 1. And if you guys want to check out yourself, like, even Blizzard posted on their YouTube channel, like, a side-by-side comparison. So I think they're like, hey, like, there is a difference now between the Switch 1 and Switch 2 version for Overwatch
and it's
1.
Large.
Yeah, it's definitely a difference. But yeah, besides Blizzard, like, who else is worth highlighting here?
I think one dev, and obviously they're they're in a bit of a turmoil right now, sorting out things themselves. But I think one dev that historically has been really good with third-party support for Nintendo that we kind of haven't seen would be Ubisoft.
Yep.
That's one we've seen them partner and make games with Nintendo. And they kind of, it's been a bit of a mixed bag with them of getting their stuff to Switch 2. Again, they're facing a lot of troubles internally with their sale and everything.
But that's not to say they haven't had some Switch 2 ports. Like Star Wars Outlaws is on Switch 2. I'm going to say Assassin's Creed. I don't want to say Black Flag, even though we know Black Flag now. I'm trying to think of that one. But yeah, Assassin's Creed's on there, the newest one. But outside of that, like, it is kind of shocking not seeing Ubisoft with a little bit more support, giving their partnership with Nintendo on the previous system being Switch 1. But I mean, from there, like, do we kind of like hit our first, like, I guess, roadblock? Is this like really all the third parties that are worth like mentioning at the time? Does this really kind of show like where the cracks start to show for Switch 2 and third parties?
Yeah, I think a good place to look is one of the best examples of third-party support on Switch 2, and also one that's maybe the most worrying, which would be CD Projekt Red. Them getting Cyberpunk on Switch 2 at launch was massive.
And on one
I
cartridge.
played a little bit of it. Yeah, all on one cartridge, which in the era of everyone, mass hysteria over game key cards, pretty crazy that they were able to get it all on one cartridge. That's another example of a great Switch 2 port. But the next project for CD Projekt Red is going to be Witcher 4, and I don't believe we have any kind of confirmation it's coming to Switch 2, do we?
We don't, but if it's... Yeah, we don't even have a release year for it, I don't believe. But if it's anything like the Witcher 3, I could see them not releasing it day and date. Obviously, I think the Witcher 3 came out before Switch 1. I could be wrong. Someone will correct me on that. But they made compromises with that, and that ran on Switch 1. I mean, I want to say with some issues, but still, like, it's shocking that they were able to get something like that on Switch 1.
Yeah, I think with Switch 4, and this is... Switch 4. Jeez, we're jumping ahead 2 more generations. Witcher 4. It's a good segue into kind of where I want to push the conversation, which is what is going to be the breaking point for the Switch 2 performance-wise. So far, we've seen the Switch 2 handle a good amount. A lot of these games have run pretty well on the Switch 2, even, on par with other consoles. I just reviewed Pragmata, and there are times where, it's running steady 60 frames per second and looks, as good as the standard, PS5 version of the game. But you look at something like a Witcher 4, if it is going to come to Switch 2, and Witcher 4 had that big tech demo that they did with it was a big news that they were switching to Unreal Engine 5. They do this big demo with this lively world, all these interacting parts, and it makes you wonder, is the Switch 2 going to be able to handle that? Another great example of a massive game that we know is coming, massive world and massive game that we know is coming, and we don't know if the Switch 2 is going to be able to handle it. GTA 6. That game is going to take over the world, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Switch 2 can get a version of it, especially because that's, a giant player base. Obviously a lot of people have their doubts over the overlap, but I think there are a lot of people that would buy GTA 6 on the Switch to be able, if it runs well, if it works, I think that would be something enticing to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think companies will try to make the compromises that they see fit for it running on Switch 2. I think a lot of third parties are probably going to take it a lot more serious with the sales of how well the Switch 1 did. It's like, you're not going to just leave this hanging, right? Like, you definitely want to support this as much as possible. And that's where, again, like, we're online all the time and we see what people's reactions are online. And it's like, do we really need a PS6 in the next, like, year or two? So that's where I really think, like, third parties are going to be like, hey, like, do we really need to make our games this big or this expansive if it's not going to be able to run on every single platform? Because again, like, that's just going to take you more time, more money, more work. And it's like, you don't want to leave people hanging on a platform like this, especially with how large the player base is. I mean, with the Switch 1, they hit, over 150 million units sold. So, like, if that's anything to go by, it's like, I don't think you want to leave the Switch 2 hanging. And on top of that, too, like, we're still seeing games being ported to the PS4. Like, that's crazy to talk. Like, not the PS5. Like, we're still in the PS5 generation, but to say stuff is still being supported on PlayStation 4, that is just like, okay, like, I would have never thought anyone would be saying that in 2026. So again, like, seeing that PS6 is probably going to be announced in the next, like, couple of years. Like, again, I'm in no rush to get it. I hope devs aren't in any rush because, again, like, it just makes sense using the hardware we currently have right now and sticking with that. So again, I think the devs, third parties, are going to find the compromises and find a way to make it work on Switch 2.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I think one other thing I wanted to touch on is just kind of the outlook of the Switch 2, being that the Switch kind of came into the market as this brand new thing, the Switch 1, I should say, came out into the market as this brand new thing, this hybrid console. We didn't really have anything like it. And the Switch 2 has been released in this era of there are a million portable PCs out there that are, they're Switch knockoffs, but they do the job pretty well. Obviously, the Steam Deck is massive. You've got things like Xbox with the ROG Ally. And then we've even got rumors that PlayStation is coming out with their own portable kind of device. With all of that kind of competition, I guess my question is, do you think the Switch 2 is going to be affected by any of that in terms of third party? Obviously, the first party support, everyone's going to go to the Switch 2. You buy your Switch 2 for your Mario, you buy your Switch 2 for your Zelda, your Star Fox, if it ever comes. You buy it for all of those things, but the third parties are what make it a really good value, because I can play my Mario and I can play, Power Wash Simulator or whatever. I don't know, whatever you guys are playing on your Switch 2. But if it becomes a better value to play on one of those kind of custom PCs, or if it becomes a situation where the Switch 2 can't run some games that can be run on something like the PlayStation hardware, do you think that will kind of start to separate people from the Switch 2, and maybe they'll buy their third-party games elsewhere if they weren't already?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility. And again, like, I don't have the numbers in front of me saying, like, how many people own a Switch and then a separate console on top of that. I want to say it's somewhat high. Like, if you own a PlayStation, again, you probably own a Switch or vice versa. But the thing I think or at least with Switch 1, which kind of helped it as a selling point, was a price point. And right now, like, I guess the Switch 2 is looked at as somewhat so expensive. I mean, it's over $500 now. But the thing is with that is, like, when the next iteration of these handheld consoles come out, I think the Switch 2 is still going to look as, like, the cheaper alternative, right? Like, whenever the Steam Deck 2 comes out, I mean, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the price of the Switch 2. But then again, I mean, maybe Valve has some secret way of keeping that price down, so that's where it might look a little bit more enticing to be like, hey, like, I'm gonna go over to play my games on a Steam Deck or the PlayStation Portable or whatever it may be. But again, like, going back to my original point, I think that third parties are really gonna treat this as a platform that they need to be. They saw the success with the Switch 1. I think Capcom kind of leading the way shows other people that it's like, hey, you guys should really take this somewhat serious, because whenever you check the eShell or the eShop charts, whatever, when a new Capcom game comes out, it's like top 3, I feel like. I think like Resident Evil 9 was like number 1 on the eShop charts for a very long time. Again, like, we don't have the solid numbers in front of us, so I don't know how well it's sold overall on Switch 1 or Switch 2. But yeah, I think, again, we're also in a weird point where the dev kits didn't go out right away to these third parties, which I feel like that's a loss on Nintendo's end. Like, they should have given these out to get people the ball rolling. So it's going to be weird seeing what happens over the next couple of years before the next generation does come out. But if I'm any of these third parties, I want to try to get out my game on this platform probably as soon as possible, honestly.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, like you said, Capcom has set the standard. Capcom has shown that there is money to be made here and games to be sold. I guess one last thing before we wrap this up, in terms of third parties, one thing that's really stood out to me with this generation for the Switch 2 is not just the third party support from developers that are putting their published games on there, but third parties working with Nintendo to make games. Obviously, one of the biggest games we've had this year is Pacopia, and that was worked on with Koei Tecmo.
Yep.
What's your kind of read on that kind of support with Nintendo seemingly playing really nice and friendly with some of these third-party developers that can help make their games?
In the case of Pacopia, again, I think they have a good relationship with Koei Tecmo. I think it doesn't hurt that they're also in the same country as them, so I think getting work done over there is really somewhat easier for them to get done. Outside of that, it's like, I don't know if we're going to see another Cadence of Hyrule. I don't know if we're going to see, like, hey, let's just work with this indie developer, and I don't even know how that story went. Like, maybe, I could be wrong, but maybe Miyamoto saw the game, I think, the first Cadence of Hyrule, or Cadence, what's the first one called? Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Crypt of the, yeah.
Yeah, so I think he just, like, liked that game, so I think he wanted to attach, like, Zelda to it, and they just kind of ran off with it. But in the case of, like, a Mario & Rabbids 2, I don't know if we're going to see anything like that anytime soon. Again, like, third-party developers helping out Nintendo, especially in the Japanese market, like, I think that's going to be something common moving forward, but, like, taking their IP and working on it, it's kind of baffling that they haven't done it more, like, especially with those lesser known IPs or ones that just haven't had the spotlight in such a long time. Like, again, you mentioned Star Fox, like, why not just give it to someone else that maybe they're like diehard fans and they really know what to do, how to make the series good going forward, or like maybe you give like an F-Zero or like an Earthbound to someone. But yeah, again, seeing the Cadence of Hyrule, the Mario & Rabbids thing all over again, or even Star Fox and Starlink, like, I don't know if we're going to see much of that moving forward on Switch 2, because we really haven't seen anything like that yet. But again, we're still so early on in the life cycle of the Switch 2 that I could be saying that right now, and then we could see the next Nintendo Direct Partner Direct, and it could be like a crossover where it's like, oh, we're doing another Mario and Sonic game, and this time they're skateboarding. It's like, why are they skateboarding? They're not at the Olympics anymore, but again, it could be something as bizarre as that.
Sega will do anything but re-release Sonic Adventure.
That kills me. That kills me. But yeah, so any other thoughts before we go?
Nah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Overall, I'd say Switch 2 third-party support.
Are we grading it?
Ooh. Yeah, you know what? Let's grade it. Why not?
Okay.
I'm going to give it...
What's the highest?
Overall,
Is S tier the highest, or are we just doing A highest?
I like an S tier.
Okay. But I don't think we're giving it an S tier, though.
You're not wrong.
Right,
I'm going a solid B. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I'll go solid B. I think so far, the games that have shown up, we've got very solid versions of them that, hold their own against some of their contemporaries. As for the future of the Switch 2, I am still a little bit skeptical. I'm wondering if we're ever going to hit a wall of this can't run on the Switch 2 the same way we hit a wall with the Switch 1 of this can't run on the Switch 1. But for right now, what we are seeing, I think that they have done a great job of getting some of these third-party games to run on the Switch 2 and run well.
I'm a little bit lower. I'm not as positive. Again, like if we're looking at the whole package, including indie, including obviously stuff from Nintendo, I might be a little bit higher, but strictly third parties outside of those two groupings, like I'm giving it a C. I think it could be a lot better. I think it could be a lot worse. Obviously, like you said, with those dev kits going out a little bit later, and just like weird things with like Elden Ring not showing up as it was supposed to last year, and then where's Dusk Bloods? It's like, again, there are so many good things going on right now too, like with Square Enix and Capcom releasing games day and date. Like I love seeing that, but again, like there's just so many more things just missing. Again, like why did it take Overwatch 2 so long, or Overwatch 1 to get to a Switch 2 version, even though like we play that all the time. But again, it could be a lot better, it could be a lot worse, but I'm somewhat satisfied at where we're at right now, and I'm only looking forward to seeing what else comes out for Switch 2 third party wise. And again, there's always that lurking fear that it's like once we hit the next generation, like are these third party companies really going to want to support it? Because it's like, hey, like we make things run so much better, look so much better on this current generation of platforms, why are we going back to the Switch 2? But again, like we could be proven wrong, because with the sales of the Switch 1, it's like, again, third parties don't leave this console hanging. Like there is a player base there, regardless of how it runs. Like even though I still have the PS5 to play some of these games on it, we both played Pragmata on Switch 2 and we loved it. It was a great way to play it. So I think with that, I think we can only wait to see what else comes out third party wise. But until next time, everyone, thanks for listening to our discussion of third parties on Switch 2. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more third-party news on Switch 2 and everything else Nintendo. But until then, we'll catch you next time. See you, everyone.
Ciao, guys.